Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever actually stopped to think about how a physical light wave bouncing off a tree, or just an invisible pressure wave moving through the air, somehow becomes this vivid picture or a beautiful melody right inside your head? It's honestly a biological marvel. So today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating journey of a stimulus. We're going to decode the incredible machinery of the human eye and ear to understand how we actually truly experience the world around us. Let's get into it. But, real quick, before we get into the actual mechanics, take a second to think about your own perception. Did you know that you have a literal blind spot right now? It's absolutely true. Our sensory organs are these incredible, highly tuned machines, but they have these built-in biological quirks that we basically never notice in our day-to-day lives, mostly because our brain just fills in the gaps for us. So here is our roadmap for the journey. 1. Translating the outside world. 2. The anatomy of sight. 3. Correcting common vision defects. 4. The mechanics of hearing. And finally, number 5, the secret of balance. Starting off with Section 1, translating the outside world, from physical waves to brain waves. It's really kind of mind-blowing when you think about it philosophically. How do completely external, purely physical things, like the wavelength of light or the frequency of moving air, become these rich, internal sensations that we experience as vision and sound? Well, where does that translation actually begin? It all starts with receptors. A receptor is basically any specialized tissue or cell that's sensitive to a specific stimulus. You can think of them as your body's ultimate biological translators. Photoreceptors catch light, while phonoreceptors catch sound. They're the frontline workers literally converting the wild, chaotic outside world into tiny electrical nerve impulses that our nervous system can actually read and make sense of. Moving on to part 2, the anatomy of sight. The brain's high-tech organic camera. Let's actually look inside the human eye. When you check out this cross-section, the blueprint of this biological camera becomes pretty clear. The wall of your eye is made up of 3 main concentric layers. The outermost layer is the sclerotic. That's the tough, fibrous white part of your eye. Then the middle layer is the choroid, which is packed with blood vessels and contains this dark pigment to stop light from just bouncing all around inside. And finally, the innermost layer is the retina, which acts as the incredibly sensitive, living film of our organic camera. And hanging out right there on the retina are 2 totally distinct types of sensory cells. First up, the rod cells. These are basically your night shift workers. They contain a pigment called rhopsin and are super sensitive to dim light, but they don't perceive color, which, by the way, is exactly why the world looks grayscale to you at night. Then we have the cone cells. These are your daytime, high-definition color cameras. They contain iodopsin, they need bright light to function, and they're packed really densely right in the center of your retina, an area known as the yellow spot, which is what gives us our vibrant, sharp color vision. So how exactly does a bunch of light rays bouncing around actually result in you seeing an object? Let's walk through this crazy 4-step pathway. Step 1. Light rays bounce off an object and enter your eye through transparent structures like your cornea and the lens. Step 2. These structures bend that light to focus an image directly onto your retina. But here's the truly wild part. The image projected on the back of your eye is actually upside down. Step 3. Your rod and cone cells react to that light, generating chemical changes that spark a nerve impulse. And finally, step 4. Those impulses travel down the optic nerve straight to your brain, and your brain performs the ultimate post-processing trick, flipping that upside-down image so you perceive the world right side up. And that brings us to a super crucial biological term, accommodation. Sounds technical, but this is just the process of focusing your eye to see objects at different distances. And amazingly, your eye does this by literally morphing the physical shape of the elastic lens sitting inside it. Think about it like this. When you gaze at something far away, like a mountain, a ring of muscles called the ciliary muscles relaxes. This pulls on these suspensory ligaments, stretching your lens out so it becomes thin and flat. But when you look down at a book right in front of your face, those ciliary muscles contract. They move forward, loosening up the ligaments. Because the lens is naturally elastic, it just springs right back into a thicker, more rounded shape, which bends the light perfectly for near vision. It's an incredible mechanical adjustment happening constantly without you even thinking about it. All right, part 3, correcting common vision defects, when the biological camera needs fixing. Because let's face it, what happens when this precise biological camera gets a little out of focus? Sometimes the physical mechanics just don't align perfectly. Take myopia, or short-sightedness, which you can see at the top there. The eyeball is actually just a bit too long from front to back, which causes the image to focus in front of the retina. We fix this by putting a concave or diverging lens in front of the eye to spread the light out before it enters. On the flip side, hyperopia, down at the bottom, is when the eyeball is a little too short, so the image focuses behind the retina. We correct that with a convex converging lens to basically pull the focus forward where it belongs. And it's not just about the physical length of the eyeball, right? There are a few other common ways our vision can get a bit wonky. For example, astigmatism happens when there's an uneven curvature of the cornea, making just certain parts of an object look blurry. Then there's presbyopia, super common as we get older, where the lens simply loses its natural elasticity, making things up close hard to see. If that normally transparent lens actually turns cloudy or opaque, that's a cataract, and that can require a surgical swap. We also see chemical issues like night blindness, where a lack of vitamin A means your body literally can't synthesize the pigment your rod cells need to see in dim light. And of course, there's color blindness, a genetic condition where certain colors just can't be distinguished. Take a look at these circular patterns. If you've got normal color vision, the numbers hidden in the dots should jump right out at you. But genetic color blindness, which, fun fact, predominantly affects males, prevents you from discriminating between certain colors, usually red and green. This happens simply because specific cone cells on the retina are either defective or just entirely missing. Moving to part 4, the mechanics of hearing, amplifying the world around us. So we've covered the camera of the brain. Now let's explore the ears. How does the body take totally invisible waves of vibrating air pressure and translate them into music or speech? Well, let's take a tour. Starting on the left, you have the outer ear, specifically the pinna, which acts exactly like a funnel. Sound travels down the canal and strikes the eardrum. From there, we enter the middle ear, crossing a tiny mechanical bridge made of literally the 3 smallest bones in the human body: the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Finally, the signal plunges deep into the inner ear, hitting that really curious snail-shaped structure known as the cochlea. When you break this down into steps, it really is the most astonishing mechanical chain reaction. Step 1, an acoustic wave travels through the air and gets funneled by your pinna. Step 2, that wave literally crashes into your eardrum, forcing it to vibrate. Step 3, this vibration shakes those 3 tiny ear ossicles, which act as levers to massively amplify the movement. Step 4, the last bone, the stirrup, punches against a membrane called the oval window. Step 5, this physical punching sends ripples through the fluid that fills up the cochlea, bending these microscopic sensory hair cells living inside. And finally, step 6, bending those tiny hairs sparks an electrical impulse that shoots down the auditory nerve to your brain. You are quite literally hearing by feeling the microscopic shaking of biological parts. Which brings us to part 5, the secret of balance, the ear's hidden second job. Now, here is a totally wild twist that a lot of people don't realize. The ear isn't strictly just for hearing. The inner ear actually functions as a complex liquid gyroscope, keeping us upright. Sitting right there on top of the cochlea are the semicircular canals. There are 3 of them, and they are arranged at exact right angles to each other, representing the 3 dimensions of space: up and down, side to side, and front to back. They are your body's ultimate spatial orientation system. To understand how this works, we have to look at the 2 distinct types of balance your body is managing. First is dynamic equilibrium. This is handled entirely by those semicircular canals when your body is actually moving, like when you turn your head to look at something or spin around. Meanwhile, static equilibrium is managed by sensory patches in 2 little chambers called the utriculus and sacculus. These guys register your stationary balance with respect to gravity, like when you're just standing still. Our sources actually gave a perfect example of this. If you spin round and round, the fluid in the semicircular canals continues to spin for a short time even after you stop, which is exactly what makes you feel dizzy. It perfectly illustrates the mechanics of seasickness too. See, your visual system tells your brain, hey, we've stopped moving, but the physical momentum of the fluid inside those canals is still sloshing around, pushing against your sensory hairs. So your brain is getting these wildly conflicting signals, resulting in that spinning, dizzy feeling. Our entire journey today through these complex mechanisms brings up an incredible philosophical point that I want to conclude on. Consider this provocative question from the source material. You saw a dream. Did the eyes see it? Is it the eyes that see or the brain through the eyes? We've spent this whole explainer tracing the physical mechanics: lenses bending light, retinas catching photons, eardrums vibrating, fluids sloshing around in canals. But ultimately, all these intricate organs do is send tiny electrical pulses into the dark void of your skull. the actual subjective experience of seeing a vibrant sunset or hearing your absolute favorite song. That true perception ultimately happens entirely within the mysterious confines of your mind. It's a whole lot to think about. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and definitely keep questioning how you experience the world around you.